Tottenham beat Arsenal 1-0 in the first North London derby abroad thanks to a stunner from Pap Sarr, as Thomas Frank further solidifies his tactical prowess against Mikel Arteta's side. In this video, we're going to look at how Thomas Frank got the better of Mikel Arteta, the things that we did well and the things that we still need to improve. And this, for me, given the fact it was a friendly, was actually quite competitive amongst the players. So I was quite impressed from what I saw. But let's take a look at how we set up in the game and if it was any different to what it was like in previous matches. So this is pretty much how the two teams lined up. Obviously, we've got Porro, Romero, Van de Ven, Spence, Sarr, Bentancur, Bergval, Kudus, Odegaard, and Richarlison, obviously Vicario in goal against Arsenal. So we were obviously deploying, the standard 4-2-3-1. Arsenal in their 4-3-3 with Norgard, generally speaking, at the base, but kind of swapped with Rice a fair amount during the match. Obviously, as we would have seen in our previous video that I did against Reading in his first match, that's Thomas Frank's first match, about how the shape changes depending on whether we're out of possession or whether we're building up from the back, and it might change depending on where we are on the pitch. And if you haven't seen that video, I would recommend going and giving that a watch to kind of understand how we were in these first couple games. And what I'm interested to see here is how we set up differently compared, obviously now that we're playing a much better opposition in Arsenal compared to the likes of Reading, Luton, Wickham. And there were slight tweaks. There were things that were very similar, but there were slight tweaks, especially when it came to how we were building up with the ball at the back. So if I just get to the one where it's just our team, there you go, that's a lot better. This is typically how we were building up in the game against Arsenal. It's strange. It's almost a 3-4-4 formation because we used Vicario a lot more in build-up. Typically, as I was saying for the one against Reading, and this is weeks ago now, and it's sort of the same for Luton, when we got the ball quite deep into our own box, further at the back, the goalkeeper gets involved heavily. Now, typically, what's happened in the Reading game, for example, is that Udogie, who was playing left-back, went further up, and it almost shifted. It started to slowly shift into a 3-2-5. That is what happened against Reading. Now, against Arsenal, who are a better opposition and can hit us on the break a lot better, it changed slightly. There was a few moments where we were building up with just Vicario, Romero, Van de Ven. Porro and Spence were slightly further up. Then you had Sarr and Bentancur in the midfield, and then Bergval was the one that was joining sort of Richarlison further up the pitch. And yeah, it almost created, like I said, this sort of 3-4-4, or even, dare I say, a 5-2-4 in some occasions, because obviously Spence and Porro sometimes didn't push that high up. They were a lot further back than in previous matches. So this is typically how we built up. But Vicario almost became a third centre-back, so to speak, in his build-up play, and I'll show you an example right now of what I mean by that. So this one was a lot more extreme example of what I was talking about of this sort of 3-4-4 shape. As you can see, Vicario's on the ball in his own box, on the edge of his own area. Look how wide sort of Romero and Van de Ven have gone to sort of stretch the attack of Odegaard and Havertz, who are trying to press the goalkeeper. That gave Vicario big gaps in the middle to play the long balls over that Thomas Frank likes from us. But as you can see, 3 at the back there. Bentancur was just coming into frame as an option, but obviously was tightly guarded by Norgard, so to speak. And then as you can see, since there were no options to sort of play it short, as the ball went over, it was forward towards Richarlison, who was obviously trying to battle with Kivior to win this ball. Now notice how in this image you can't, if I move myself to the top left, you'll see this a bit easier. You can't see Porro or Spence higher up. That was the difference between this game versus the likes of Luton and Reading. Usually we saw in those matches either Porro was really high up on the right hand side or Destiny Udogie was high up on the left-hand side in the Reading game. This time, it's just the 4 of them, as you can see here. But we had Richarlison battling for the ball, and it kind of, felt like he still kept on going. He went to win the ball back. You can see Sarr slowly starting to move further up now, but really and truly, it's still just the 4 players up in attack from the long ball from Vicario. Now, they do well to sort of, Richarlison does well, actually, to sort of put Kivior off, and then you see Kudus coming in to collect the loose ball. And then we get to really start our attack. It kind of falls back to Kudus, who does well to go round. Now, in this specific instance, he has a shot, whereas I think maybe he should have passed it along towards Odegaard, who had quite a lot of space on this left-hand side, actually. Was playing really well against Ben White. but this is kind of more to sort of illustrate how we were building up. This happened a lot throughout the match. Vicario would have it at the back. The centre-backs would split a bit wide, almost forming this three at the back with the goalkeeper involved. Ball goes over the top. Got the four there ready to pounce on the attack to Arsenal's four, basically going man for man pretty much. And Sarr slightly higher than Bentancur to sort of help and support if there was a loose ball in the midfield. But in this case, Kudus manages to have a shot. It actually luckily deflected and fell to Odegaard in this instance. And you can see right here, Bergvall ready to make that run into that gap. But as he was doing quite well for the whole of that first half, Odegaard was doing really well getting one-on-one against Ben White. And in fact, Saliba actually had to cover him a lot in this game. But he has a shot. He kind of sees a gap bottom corner. It's a very, very, very tight angle. And it hits the post. We did have either Bentancur was a lot deeper in that Reading match, or Porro formed the back three with Romero, and I think it was Danzo at the time. Usually one of the fullbacks formed the back three. This time it was the goalkeeper that stepped up and formed the back three to kind of give us more options in that sort of midfield area to pump it to the front four. This weird sort of 3-4-4 is typically how we were building up a lot and hitting balls long during that game. And to really, truly show the differences between the two, let's have a look at what the Reading average position was. So Spurs, this is Reading. This is us on the right-hand side, as you can see over here. You can really see, look, Destiny Udogie was really high up. You can see that we pressed high up as well. This is our average positions. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into their half. You can almost see this 3-2-5 shape in general performing. I know Porro goes a bit further forward, but you had, look, Danzo, Romero, Porro, Bentancur, Sarr, and then the 5 here in attack. So you can clearly see it's starting to take shape in how Frank wants us to build up. Compare that to the Arsenal game, where it's a little bit different. You can see how much deeper in general we sort of were doing this mid block compared to Arsenal, which worked really well because they were actually trying to hit us long a lot of the times and they couldn't get the ball over, which is probably the difference between us now versus us with Ange, because with Ange it was just effectively, if I was to show it, with Ange it was basically Porro and whoever let's Spence, for example, more attacking midfielders would sort of press up in the middle. These wingers would go out wide. It would be one central midfielder here with the 2 defenders there. So it almost creates this like kind of arrow shape. That was a problem in a few games because what would happen is the opposition would put the ball long into these sort of spaces here, and then you're left out with Van der Ven basically having to do so much covering, or Romero on the other side. There was just a lot of space. And with Saka and Martinelli on either wing, that could have been quite dangerous. And that's what Arteta was trying to do with Arsenal. And it didn't work because of the fact that Porro and Spence were a lot deeper, as you can see from this average position here. You can see the 4, the 2, and the 4 shaping up there. So more of like a 4-2-4 shape versus the Reading, which was more of a 3-2-5, even I guess like a 2-3-5 at that point. So I hope you're with me. That's basically just explaining how our positioning and shape was slightly different against a better opposition in Arsenal than it was against someone like Luton or Reading, where we obviously had the ability to be further up the pitch. Our pressing shape was pretty much the same as it's been in previous matches. I will get onto that in a second because it basically led to our goal. But for now, I want to get into how we were very dangerous from set pieces. And this is against Arsenal, by the way, who are known for being the best set piece takers and even defending set pieces in the league. And to be honest, we made them look like chump change in comparison. So we're going to get into the first few chances that happened in the match direct from corners. So as you can see, we're currently in the 10th minute. This is a very, very, very dangerous corner that we had thanks to Porro. Similar things that you would have seen in that previous video I was talking about. More often than not, we start with all of our players at the back post and they make runs to the front post with 2 on the edge of the area. It's been happening almost every single corner we've been taking since Frank has come in. But what's good about this, and it's kind of the Una reverse of what Arsenal did to us, as you can see here, Mickey van der Ven sort of by himself at the back post almost did the Ben White job of blocking the goalkeeper, and Raya had a disastrous time at these corners because of it. So as you can see, we've got the players starting at the back. They're making that run towards the front post. Van der Ven there starting to block Raya at the far post as the ball is about to come in. As usual, our striker hangs around the back post. We saw that in previous games with Lancashire and Solanke doing the same thing. And as this gets whipped in, Van der Ven does a good job at blocking Raya and stopping him from getting and collecting the ball, which the Arsenal defence so early in the game did not clock that we were going to do this. The ball bounces and actually hits the post and comes back out to Richarlison, who in my opinion, to be honest, could have been in a better position. I feel like he sort of hung around the edge here. I know he's been marked heavily, but I feel like he could have done a bit better to sort of get closer to the back post to be able to tap this opportunity in. But it comes back out to him. It's not a great header. And then Saliba is able to clear. And you can kind of see it again from this angle. Van der Ven blocking Raya in as it comes in, flapping at the front post. Van der Ven allowing the gap to be there. Really and truly, Richarlison should be closer to goal here to be able to tap in, but it does hit the post and bounce out. But yeah, very dangerous, and it's nice to see these same patterns in play, and it's good to see it being practiced every single game. Now we get on to another corner in the first half, this time taken by Kudus on the other side of the pitch, and this is another big chance that I think Richarlison should have done much better in, but nonetheless, we are being big threats from set pieces. This is exciting. This is not what Spurs are used to. Again, same thing. You can see at this point, the players have made their run towards the front post. Van der Ven blocking Raya, tussling with him again, making life very, very difficult for him. Look, 3 at the front post, Van der Ven blocking Raya, just doing enough to put him off. Not enough that it's a foul, just enough to put him off. Again, Romero sort of on the 6-yard box, Richarlison at the back post. This time, I think he learnt from the first one. He was too far away from the back post. The ball comes swinging in. It's about here at the moment, if you can see my cursor. And this time he's gotten the better of Lewis Skelly. He's gone around the back of him. He has gone to the far post. Unfortunately, I don't know if he just went to head this with his eyes closed or what, but it kind of hits the post again because Richarlison just misses the header and it comes off and hits his arm and then goes over, I believe, or hits the crossbar. Oh, it goes over. There you go. And look, you can see Odebear's face down here, and Mickey's about to do the same. So look at all of them. Yeah, another big chance wasted. Another corner that was aimed perfectly at the back post, ready for our striker to tap in. And unfortunately, I just don't think Richarlison had the best of games, and that was a very, very, very good chance for us to go 1-0 up. But like I said, we are becoming very dangerous from set pieces. It's just another little part of our game that Frank is working on, and great to see. And to be honest, Arsenal had 13 corners and I didn't feel worried once. Genuinely did not feel worried, which is a credit to what Thomas Frank and the team have done so early on within Spurs in pre-season, that we've gone from being probably the shakiest team at defending corners to now not worried against the best in the league. That's impressive. But we do eventually score from an absolute banger from Pat Matissar. But this is where I kind of want to go back a little bit, because it's our out of possession pressing and our shape that led to the goal. And this has not really changed too much from the other games. It's typical amongst loads of teams. We're pretty much pressing, or should I say defending, in a 4-4-2 formation. You can see at the back here, the back four, really tight, really close, sort of within, like, look, they're barely stretched part, like they're not even close to being stretched to the whole penalty area. 4 of them quite tight. The 2 central midfielders next to each other here. Then you've got Kudus and Odebear slightly deeper than Berval and Richarlison, who are the ones doing the pressing. Now, what I found interesting in this game, actually, and I think this is something that Frank tweaked a little bit, was because we know that Richarlison isn't always fit all the time. He obviously can't necessarily last 90 minutes game from game. I don't think he wanted Richarlison to do all of the relentless pressing, something that Solanke can do. So more often than not in this match, it was Berval that was doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But Richarlison Richarlison can press, does press well. I just think Frank was aware that he's far more injury prone than a lot of other players. So used the legs in Berval to really press higher up. But in this instance, they're both doing really good work at pressing. The ball's down here with Saliba. It then gets played across, and that triggers Richarlison to go. You can see Kudus as well, ready to go and press up on Lewis Skelly as Kivior gets the ball. Obviously, it goes quite deep at this point. It gets played back to Raya, and then you still see Richarlison and Berval pressing really high up. And this time, rather than going long, actually, Raya decides to play it through the middle, into Miles Lewis Skelly, and this has triggered everyone else to move. If I move myself out of the way quickly, that's a bit easier. You can see the other players. Look where Sarr is here on the far right of your screen. Sarr, in almost an instant, in a flash, as soon as that ball has been played through to Miles Lewis Skelly, and there's that little pocket of space here that he has that he doesn't want him to be in, Sarr moves rapidly forward and closes him down. All right, I think Richarlison does take a little bit of a nibble at Lewis Skelly's legs here. I think in the Premier League, if that gets VAR, it's probably disallowed. Nonetheless, it wasn't given. I think I'm more just impressed that, look, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. As soon as that ball has played through the middle between the two players that are pressing, the rest of the team come in and help out to sort of win that ball back in that midfield area. And again, Sarr did very well, got the ball off Lewis Skelly. He sees that Raya is miles off of his line and he has a pop. And my word, does he have a pop. It goes over, in, and then we get this beautiful moment right here. So yeah, this is just basically showing that how the pressing worked. And in fact, if we go back to the average positions, you'll notice that Raya's average position is actually outside of his box. I've been speaking to a lot of Arsenal friends that watch them all season. He is known for being very, very high up the pitch. And with how much Thomas Frank pays attention to minor details, I would not be surprised if he told the Spurs players to keep an eye on the fact that Raya is always high up on the pitch. I mean, the players are intelligent enough for themselves. They would have seen that he was high up throughout this match because he was the one that was tends to play the long balls over the top. And I think Sarr did an absolute wonderful job at taking advantage of this, and it was a beautiful goal. So that's what worked well for pretty much all the game, and how we were set up and how we were able to get the goal and how to be threats from set pieces. But what didn't work well? I think in this game, a lot of our issues really were in that final third moment. Apart from that Odegaard chance you saw early on where he hit the post, we really struggled to create some clear-cut chances. And in fact, if I have a look at the stats now, how many were there? Yeah, I mean, look at that. Look, 1 big chance each, all right? 16 shots to our 6. Not great. I think we were defending well for the most part. A couple of mishaps from Romero heading it back to Rice, for example. But apart from that, I thought we really defended well, especially in the midfield area as well. I think we were building up quite well a few times as well. The problem was when we got to that final third, and as good as Odegaard looked, as good as Kudus looked, that they were taking on their players really well. I mean, Miles Lewis-Skelly had a horrid time against Kudus on that right-hand side. I think, unfortunately, because Richarlison wasn't really on it that much in this game, it really let us down in the final third. And I'll give you a good example here now. We're into the second half at this point. As you can see, Arsenal have a throw-in. Norgard tries to do some little flick at the bottom here, but it actually goes back towards Lucas Berval, who wins the ball. It kind of does like a little trickle between him and Rice. Either way, it falls to Richarlison, and we're on the break. Look at that, 4 players gearing ready to go against their 3. Obviously, both takes a while to turn, but look, you've got Odegaard pushing up on the left-hand side. Richarlison driving forward, looking to see where Kudus is going. Kudus running down the right-hand side. This is a very good chance, sort of relatively early. Well, halfway through the second half. We get to this point here, and in fairness, I do think Kudus probably could have made a better run. We could see from the previous shot here, Richarlison's looking to see where he is. He's making a run sort of on the outside of Miles Lewis-Skelly. It's a little bit difficult. You can't really see him yet, but you'll see him in the next shot. But Kivior is also there. You can kind of see a shadow on the right-hand side here. So it's very difficult for Richarlison to sort of play a ball between those two, considering how deep Kivior was. For me, I sort of feel like maybe start the run out wide, but as we get closer and closer to goal, in this instance here, I really would have liked Kudus to sort of make that run in between the left back and the centre back, because at that point, Richarlison may be able to feed a through ball onto him, would have had a clear-cut chance. Unfortunately, both wingers kind of kept running wider and wider. But I also think Richarlison didn't help himself in this instance. I think he could have laid the ball off a lot earlier, maybe to Odegaard. But as we get closer, even like here, for example, it's very difficult for someone who's not really a dribbly player, not fantastic one-on-one, to try and take on Saliba of all people and Kivior as close together as they were. And you see what I mean by this big gap opening up. If Kudus made that little run there, Richarlison might have been able to find a pass through to him. Unfortunately, he doesn't. But either way, I think from this point onwards, I think Richarlison's only got eye for goal, considering how wide our players were. And he inevitably loses it trying to take on the 2 centre-backs. And it's just, when you're surrounded by 5 here, and when Richarlison isn't a 1v1 sort of player like our wide men are, it's very difficult to get a good chance from here. And this happened a few times. Whenever we got to this sort of area here, we didn't really do too much. A lot of the times, maybe it went out wide to Kudus. There just wasn't really a proper target man to either whip the ball in, or there weren't too many shots on the edge of the area, apart from, like I said, in the first half, those efforts from Odegaard, were pretty much the only ones. I think we could have done a lot better in that final third. But very quickly before we finish up, onto some small details that I noticed that I really, really liked actually. So this was Gyökeres's debut for Arsenal when he came on in about the 75th minute or so, 76th minute. And you can see, and this is what I loved, throughout his whole time on the pitch, for the whole 15, actually nearly 20 minutes he ended up on the pitch, Danzo made his life hell. To the point where Gyökeres only had 3 touches in the whole game, and it was in one moment. And I just love these little things where we're just winning duels a lot more. We're trying to be a lot more aggressive. Danzo, first thing here, look, the ball's out wide, nowhere near it. He's initiating the contact. He's already trying to put him off in the middle of the pitch. Still continue to put him off as soon as the ball's out wide, and you'll see this a lot now. Another phase of play here. Davis now, picking him up, trying to make him uncomfortable. At this point, it leads out to a corner. In this instance here, a ball sort of comes over the top from, I think, who was right back. Would it have been Ben White still? I think it was still Ben White at this point. Danzo's first instinct, I'm going to go into Gyökeres, block him. I mean, I know this can be pretty standard for centre-backs. I think we're just not used to seeing it as Spurs fans. I think a lot of the time we've been too weak, too passive off of the ball. And I like the fact that it doesn't matter if it's a friendly, we're going to make their new striker, their new £68 million striker, his life difficult. And it just kept on happening. Look how far, so the ball's out wide again, it's being moved out wide. Danzo here on the left-hand side looking at Gyökeres. As soon as the ball is played out wide, it's not even getting ready to be whipped in yet, and he's already again initiating contact, pushing him, shoving him, arms on the back of him, making sure that if the ball's going to get anywhere near him, you're going to be off balance. Again, continuing, it doesn't matter if the ball's been pressed high, he's just making himself known and just being so much more aggressive and not allowing him to afford any time on the ball or to get Arsenal to whip into him throughout the match. Again, continuing to apply pressure to him. And this just continued for the whole 20 minutes on the pitch. Like I said, except for the 3 touches he managed to make, which inevitably ended to nothing. I just like these small details. These small things where we're being a little bit more aggressive is great, and it works. So all in all, for Frank's first, I guess, quote-unquote, difficult fixture, which it was because both teams were being quite aggressive throughout the match, I think it was pretty good. I think in the defensive side of things, we were solid, as you saw there, kind of defending in the 4-4-2 and the counter-pressing that created the chances. The slight tweaks to not have Porro and Spence go as high up and sort of build in with a goalkeeper more, so it's almost like a 3-4-4 or even like a 5-2-4 in some occasions. I think that really helped nullify Arsenal's counter-attacking ability with Saka and Martinelli on the wings. I think we did a very good job there. I think unfortunately where we fell short was the final third moments. I just think Richie did not have a good game today. I think maybe if we had Maddison in the middle, maybe if we had Solanke on the pitch, it could have been a different story. I was quite impressed with Odegaard and his 1v1 ability. I just wanted to show a little bit more personality. And if he was a little bit stronger the way Kudus was, we'd be flying on the wings. But yeah, I think all in all, a very good game from us with slight tweaks needed. I think we just need to bring this into competitive matches now and hopefully bring in some new signings. I know Palhinha's pretty much close through the door now, but we need more. I think we need a ready now left winger if some were to leave. Potentially a left back, depending on how injured Udogie is. But yeah, I was impressed. Let me know what you think of this tactical breakdown. Subscribe if you want to see some more of this, and I'll see you guys next time.